It was torn apart, stretched and ripped. The culprit was a tentacled, grotesque creature with nothing but a mouth and bone-crushing teeth. Claire identified the creature as an abomination. You see, an abomination was the thing she warned Jin about, a human who turned into a monster due to the demonic realm's karma. Raymond took a deep breath and charged at the disturbingly hideous creature. He unleashed a much stronger sacred fire than his first demonstration. It was sharp, bright, and powerful enough to cut through layers of fat and flesh. The abomination that emerged from the golden bug tent was severed in half. Unfortunately, carving that hideous bastard in half wasn't going to cut it. Rex did not expect the attack to come his way. Fortunately, he was strong enough to cut through trouble. He separated what remained of the abomination into 3 equal parts. Despite the severe damage it sustained, the monster stayed alive. Raymond started to panic. An enemy that could regenerate its body was a terrifyingly complex one to go up against. It would be safe to say that young Rex had no prior experience fighting an opponent as unfair as this. He didn't keep his eyes on the threat. As a result, he was crushed into a fine mist of blood and gore, feasted upon by the grotesque monster. His sword-wielding hand was the only body part that remained intact. Everyone present was horrified by the sudden death of the Holy Knight apprentice. He was annoying, but he did not deserve to go out like that. Holy Knight Raymond was usually stoic, but seeing one of his most loyal subordinates get turned into lunch stoked the fire within him. Pouring mana into his blade, he tunnel-visioned at the ugly bastard churning Rex's body. The level of sacred fire he unleashed was higher than anything he had ever let loose before. It effectively dismembered the abomination, cutting it into little pieces. Raymond ran right into its maw, hoping to retrieve Rex from that slimy death trap. He believed that his boy could still be saved. The Holy Knight clawed and dug into the monster's throat, staining his pristine uniform. He was so focused on the task at hand that he did not notice the abomination rebuilding its body. Jin clicked his tongue. It looked like he would have to intervene now. The reformed tentacles attempted to restrict and trap the Holy Knight, but Jin cut through them and dragged Raymond out of harm's way. He was a bit too late. Raymond sustained minor injuries across the gaps in his armor. With the Holy Knight out of commission, some mercenaries abandoned all hope of survival. Seeing such an outlandish creature wriggle and regenerate, no matter the damage sustained, drained them of the will to fight. This was the first abomination Jin had ever encountered. He wondered if he was bound to become like this if he kept on eating monster cores. That will be a problem for later. For now, he needs to get rid of the immediate threat. At full speed, Jin was practically untouchable, no matter how lethal the tentacles were. With the abomination's seemingly immortal constitution, this will end up being a battle of attrition. Jin elected to keep on dealing damage while saving his stamina and looking for a weak spot. It was a lot to juggle, but he had the skill and finesse to pull it off. He knew when to defend and when to deflect close-range attacks. Still, the enemy could poke him from unpredictable angles, catching him off balance. Thankfully, the rest of the mercenaries, led by Captain Jonathan, made themselves useful. Although they can't put out the same level of firepower as the head crusher himself, they have the advantage of numbers. In addition, Claire was there to support their blades from behind. Their job was to pin down every severed part of the abomination to prevent regeneration. Claire's magic was surprisingly effective in making that happen. Stopping pieces from reattaching was a huge help. With this, the playing field was a bit more leveled. Jin was pleased to see the mercs pull their weight, being barred from regenerating pissed off the nasty abomination. Its energy changed and the melting flesh wriggled to reveal something horrifying from within. Faces of tortured souls. Those faces probably belonged to the gluttonous sons of Golden Bug. After changing forms, it formed more tentacles to retrieve the pinned-down pieces. The ordinary mercs and their magically enhanced blades weren't able to put up a fight. Thankfully, Jin was there to interrupt the reintegration before the abomination could get back its full power. The horrifying face with bleeding eyes screeched at him angrily. It extended its tongue like a frog trying to catch a fly, but Jin was ready to deflect. He warned Jonathan and the rest to keep a distance. But the abomination got stronger somehow. The emergence of its true faces must have triggered some sort of evolution. Jin's plan was quite straightforward. Keep hacking away at it. If he can do it enough, the internal core will surely show itself. The captain assured him that the mercenaries hired for this job weren't frauds. They had been studying the monster's attack patterns. Jin welcomed their help and tapped into his freshly learned mana arts. He served as the main vanguard and main attacker, while the rest were relegated to a supporting role. With his blade enhanced by mana arts, his speed and power were significantly upgraded. He sliced and diced to his heart's content. Once he trimmed enough fat from the bloated bag of garbage, the other mercenaries joined in on the bloody festival of blades. As Jin expected, hack it enough times, and the internal core will show itself. As soon as he set his sights on that core, it was over. He sliced that thing in half, halting the abomination's rampage altogether. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Holy Knight Raymond woke up just in time to watch the ending. What a useless leader, man. Everyone celebrated with pride. They knew that when word spread around that they took part in taking down a terrifying abomination, their reputation was bound to shoot up. While the mercs were feeling relieved and hyped, Jin had snuck away with the internal core in tow. Unbeknownst to everyone present, some sexy nun was secretly watching the whole fight unfold. She lamented that in the end, Derek and Cedric were no different from their useless father. That whole family was so utterly incompetent and useless to her cause. Nevertheless, the nun's interest had already shifted to the man who stifled her plan. She was curious about who he was and why he had taken the tainted internal core. After an action-packed day, the caravan camped out to spend the night in a clearing. While everyone was in the comfort of their tents, Jin preferred the outdoors. Out here, he could inspect the only loot he got from killing the abomination. After making sure that there was no one watching, he took a bite out of that internal core. Suddenly, his mind was transported to a memory that didn't belong to him. His psyche was transplanted in the body of some fat tied to an altar, gagged and bound. He saw and heard a woman dressed in black talking about how incompetent the golden bug was. A few meters away, another man was in the same position. If they wanted to live on, the woman encouraged them to show her how special they were. She retrieved a small vial of unknown liquid and dripped it into the fat man's eye. Corruption swiftly spread throughout his body. The agony was mind-breaking. It was a disgusting process, to say the least. Thankfully, Jin snapped out of that up memory. It felt way too real. His stomach turned, and he threw up his guts. This thing very rarely happens, but eating an internal core can sometimes grant you the owner's fleeting memories. Come to think of it, these internal cores are full of side effects. The memory he just suffered through probably belonged to one of the golden bug's sons. Now he knew how they turned into that repulsive abomination. Jin learned from Claire that abominations originate from an overdose of karma. The liquid that the witchy woman used must be a concentrated form of turbid karma. There's a decent chance that he just witnessed a dark priest at work. While he was lost in thought, Claire came up to him. "It's time to leave." Seeing the dude soaked in sweat and pale as a ghost, she suspected that this boy had eaten another internal core against her constant advice. He debated telling the others what he saw, but it might just cause misunderstandings. Keeping it a secret until he knew more would be safer. Without tipping Jin's sharp senses, the woman from that vision continued keeping a close eye on him. The witch watched his every action and tried to figure out what he was plotting. She was confused to see some random guy eating raw internal cores while working for the Order Alliance. She wondered if they would meet again. By that time, will they be allies or enemies? When the sun rose, Holy Knight Raymond held a funeral for those who fell during the attack. He offered his prayers to Ea, the god of harmony. Raymond paid his respects to his apprentice, Rex, recognizing his bravery and dedication to peace. He could only hope that his passing would not be in vain. Jin dueled with the guy once, and even though they didn't have the best interactions, it was still a shame that he died so young. Raymond looked up and saw a red wolf aura farming on top of a cliff, obscured by the sun itself. He respectfully dropped to one knee and gave thanks to the regal beast. Jin asked Raymond what he was doing all of a sudden. By the Holy Knight Order's views, the red wolf is considered the closest companion of Ea, the god of harmony. The appearance of one at Rex's funeral must mean that I was offering them comfort and recognition. Jin bluntly explained that the dog was just his pet mute. His words sounded blasphemous in the Holy Knight's ear. Calling a red wolf a mute was an insult to Raymond's beliefs. To clear up the misunderstanding, Jin gave his pet a threatening look to stop acting out and come down. Mute readily ran down the cliff and steadily stood before his master. As far as Raymond knew, red wolves were considered untamable. Jin casually dropped a little bit of his lore. He simply killed an alpha werewolf, and the annoying mute had been following him ever since. In all his years traversing the demonic realm, Holy Knight Raymond had never met a dude more peculiar than Jin. He looked at Mute and turned to its master for a small favor. If the red wolf doesn't have a proper name yet, it would be an honor if Jin named him after Rex. For one, red wolves are considered sacred in their order. Inappropriately calling him a mutt stings a little. Secondly, he wishes for Rex's will, which tirelessly fought against evil, to continue purifying the entire demonic realm. Even though Rex met an untimely end, that loyal apprentice did not let go of his sword until the very end. It would be an honor to carry on Rex's legacy through a sacred beast. Jin wasn't opposed to the idea. It's the least he could do for the poor guy. He turned to his pet and asked if it was okay. The mutt was receptive to it too, so there was no problem. Henceforth, Mute shall be referred to as Rex. Now that the funeral had wrapped up, an old man pulled up and asked if he had come at a bad time. Raymond recognized the blind, old and bald elder. From the geyser's aura alone, Jin could tell that this man must be one of the highest authorities in the area. This old bag of bones was the elder of the third pioneer city, Bo, led by Holy Knight Raymond. The survivors of the failed mission paid their respects to the elder. The old man politely apologized for dropping by during such a time of grieving. He came here because an investigation was needed regarding the death of the Golden Bug's sons. Based on his tone, it sounded like he was implying that the deaths of Cedric and Derek were orchestrated by the mercenaries hired for the escort mission. Jin thought the suspicion was warranted. Their clients died during the transport of a massive fortune. It's only natural to suspect the people who constantly risk their lives for money. Raymond was ready to testify and provide evidence in support of his men. Elder Beau didn't see any problem with that. What he was more concerned about was how the heirs turned into abominations. Walking right next to Jin, the geyser commented that he could smell the stench of a dark priest all over this incident. If that wasn't direct enough, he referred to Jin by name and asked for his take on the incident. Jin did not take the implication kindly. He did not appreciate being suspected of being a dark priest. By the end of the day, the caravan was escorted into the third pioneer city. Jin and Raymond were escorted into the Vitra Arena, a training ground well-equipped for a decent-sized army. Elder B was used to the fact that talented people show their talent from a young age. Jin, on the other hand, appeared out of nowhere not too long ago. He quickly piled up massive feats one after another. On top of that, he happened to get involved in the biggest incident in the pioneer cities in recent memory. On paper, it was only natural to be a little wary of the rising star. Jin acknowledged that he really comes off shady. Hell, he wasn't even from this world originally. Even so, the old man's request to spar was a little out of left field. Raymond also opposed this so-called spar. They just got out of battle not long ago, after all. It would be best to give Jin some time to recuperate. Elder Beau pressured them to accept his terms by threatening them with criminal charges if they refused to cooperate. It was completely unreasonable. Jin felt slighted for being put in such a tough spot, all because of his abnormal strength. Moreover, he wasn't too enthused to beat up an old man. Elder Beau dropped his walking stick and seemingly read his mind, clearing up his worries. He appreciated the concern for his age, but there was really no need for consideration. After all, the reason he rose to the position of elder was purely due to the merit of his own strength. Jin was taken back by the old man's sudden burst of speed. Using his own brand of manner arts, the Great Bell Strike, Elder B nearly caved his chest in. Jin flew across the arena until his momentum was broken by a nearby armory wall. Raymond forgot to warn Jin that these bald dudes, the monks of Vitra, are skilled martial artists with incredible combat strength. Naturally, the elder is the strongest among them. Old Man B was amused that the Holy Knight seemed eager to help the mercenary. He might just get jealous and accidentally lose control of his strength at this rate. Fortunately, Jin had been woken up by the first strike. He kept up with the follow-up, moving his head to avoid getting crushed. He tried to thwart the old man away, but his quickly drawn blade was caught with Bose's bare hands. Jin would have been in better shape if the old man hadn't hit the exact same spot that the abomination had injured. He scanned his body for further damage, but was surprised to find he was completely healed. Normally, his injuries from fighting the abomination should have left him bedridden for at least 2 weeks. Even the damage from Elder Bose's first attack was healing at an astonishing rate. There is a very real possibility that eating the internal core granted him the abomination's overpowered regeneration. If that's the case, then he just hit the god jackpot. Rev up by this discovery, he started matching the Elazar's aggression. The old man no longer looked so frail. He was completely fired up. He would love to keep this spark going as long as possible, but he cannot act so childishly. Now that he has confirmed the rumors about the head crusher's strength, it's time to move on to the next phase of investigation. Using his mind's eye, he took a really close look at Jin's soul. Long ago, Elder B gave up 2 eyes to unlock his third. With this sacrifice, he gained the ability to pierce through the essence of the human soul. Using his gift, he could confirm whether Jin was truly a dark priest or something else, a rising new light perhaps. Elder B saw the same imagery that Claire was subjected to when she peered through Jin's internal world. Using the light of his third eye, Elder B vanquished the beast on the surface level and unlocked what lies beneath. What he saw was an internal world beyond his wildest nightmares. Jin's soul can only be described as a cage populated by every kind of demonic realm residents. Doing this exercise in the middle of a spa might not have been the smartest move for the Elder. Jin did not take advantage of the old man's stunned state. He didn't even know what was happening since he was unable to sense Bose's manner. The Elder averted his soul gaze, but the feeling of dread stayed. Jin's mental world goes beyond unpleasant and straight into nightmarish. It was a mystery how the young man's mind hadn't collapsed yet. He definitely wasn't a dark priest. This young man is a completely different beast. Elder Bose snapped back to reality and sincerely apologized for his rudeness. He had to invade Jin's privacy to rule out the possibility of dark priest infiltration. Once it was confirmed that he wasn't working for the other side, a young woman joined them in the arena. She introduced herself as Cindy, the youngest daughter of the Golden Bug. She wanted to entrust Jin with a quest related to the shadowy priests. After being introduced to Cindy, Jin joined her and Elder B on a trek to a forested area nearby. She filled him in on the recent rise of abomination incidents with the third pioneer city as the epicenter. In addition, many surrounding forests are being corrupted by demonic influences. After a few hours of walking and listening to incident reports, they've arrived at their destination. In front of Jin was an organic structure resembling a monster core, but much larger, attached to the forested ground and the surrounding trees. It was a rift core commonly found in the demonic realm. These things constantly pump miasmic karma into the air. A select few priests were deployed to counteract its effects, They prayed to cleanse the air without pause. At the same time, plague doctors rinsed the rift core surface to dampen its effects. Only through this practice could they prevent the spread of decay. Purifying a rift core doesn't look like an easy task at all. Jin thought that the power of karma was supposed to weaken the further they got from the Northern Empire. For a rift core to appear near a human settlement must mean that someone was tampering with nature. A dark priest must be involved. If the number of abominations and rift cores continues to increase at the current rate, the third pioneer city humanity worked so hard to build will face an existential danger. In the worst-case scenario, the city will fall and the settlers will be wiped out. Elder B and Cindy have been working together behind the scenes, and they have finally found some promising leads, pointing to a suspected location of a dark priest base. With that said, they want to enlist Jin's help in the extermination operation in 2 weeks. Of course, he will be compensated at the highest level of pay. Receiving a request from such big shots must mean that he was finally being acknowledged for his merits. Since the operation won't start for another 2 weeks, Jin tagged along with the Black Marlins until their next stop. In the middle of the day, Claire was nagging him about all the crazy torture and punishments that confirmed dark priests were subjected to. It did not take the mercenary group too long to reach their final destination. They touched down the city behind the walls, Yurgis. It was a massive place on a scale incomparable to the small pioneer cities Jin had seen. Eurus was also dubbed the safest place in the demonic realm. Perhaps he could settle down and live here someday. Now was not the time to think about peaceful living, though. While the caravan was on a short break before entering the walled city, Jin pulled Holy Knight Raymond aside to talk. After notifying Raymond about his upcoming mission, he told Captain Jonathan and the rest of the Black Marlins his plan to return to the third pioneer city for a quest. Cap knew how it goes in the mercenary business. Comrades go their separate ways after a job concludes. Still, it's always a bit sad when that day arrives. When asked about their future plans, Jonathan's next move was to simply drink and then drink some more. The same goes for the rest of the group. Claire might be the only one with a reasonable path forward. She intends to look for another job in the city. Even though the recent payouts were decent, she's still far short of the money needed to enroll in the Magic Tower. Jin was unfamiliar with the term. Claire deprecatingly explained that even though she calls herself a mage, she's just an amateur who gathered common knowledge. Her skills have barely passed the beginner level. She would have no trouble making a living with just the magic she cobbled together, but she's greedy and ambitious. Claire wants to learn higher class magic. She risks her life day in and day out as a mercenary to save up money and attend the Magic Tower to make her dreams a reality. Claire was basically working to further her studies. Jin found that incredibly admirable, since it sounds like she needs the money more than he does at the moment. Jin fished out his sack of gold coins and asked if this much would be enough to get her enrolled. Of course, Claire profusely rejected the free money. She couldn't possibly be that shameless. Jin insisted that this wasn't charity. He just wanted to pay her back for everything she'd done for him. Before she could refuse again, Jin dumped his heavy sack on her hands. He was certain that they would see each other again. Maybe she'll be a high-class mage by then. Claire nearly teared up. She had never received this level of kindness from anyone. From the bottom of her heart, she thanked him and vowed to repay the favor someday. With that taken care of, Jin bade his temporary mercenary family goodbye. He wasn't with them for long, but the bond formed was real. They were good people in an otherwise cruel world. Holy Knight Raymond already had a chat with Jin earlier. He watched the peculiar mercenary walk into the sunset from afar. Rex the Red Wolf gave him one final knowing look before joining Jin. 2 weeks later, Jin officially joined the mission to exterminate the suspected shadowy priest. Elder B and Cindy stayed in the city but deployed their best men. Although she recruited Jin for the job, she was a little bit of a skeptic when it came to the mercenary. She was one of the few people privy to the fact that Jin had eaten a monster core before. Still, Elderbor fought to have Jin included in the operation. He already verified that the young man had no ties to dark priests. Despite his assurance, Cindy firmly believed that consuming monster cores leads to the loss of one's sense of self. It was basic common sense. Even her brothers fell victim to that fact. The only reason the geyser was protecting Jin must be because of his hope that another person close to him still has some shred of humanity left. Elder B wasn't happy that Cindy was bringing up old wounds. He doesn't want to have that conversation with her at all. She apologized for the disrespect, but left the old man with a warning. Cindy agreed to keep Jin's secret for now. But if that man's sanity slipped, she promised to frame him as a dark priest and bring down the full force of her authority. Of course, the punishment will extend to the man who brought him into this operation in the first place. She could threaten Elder B all she wants. He is confident that Jin will pull through. That kid had already consumed untold amounts of monster cores, became unimaginably strong, and miraculously kept his mental world stable. Jin is living proof that humanity can be maintained despite the effects of monster cores, but the world is not yet ready to accept that possibility. Even so, Elder B firmly believes that the young man's power will bring great hope to this world, ushering in a new era. The first expeditionary force marched with dignity and discipline. They sang their little songs and touched spear tips on beat. It was a pretty spectacular display of synchronization. Their marching hymn was disrupted by the sound of solid rock breaking someone's skull. The special mercenary the higher-ups hired was literally bashing his head with a rock. After wounding himself and cracking his own forehead, Jin counted up while freely bleeding from his rock hole. When his count reached the 600th second, his flesh writhed and stitched itself back together. He thought the uneventful march was a great opportunity to test out his new regeneration ability. To heal a shallow head wound, it takes about 10 minutes. The fracture he got from the abomination was a bit more serious, and it completely healed in 2 days. He won't test it now, but a severed arm would probably regenerate within a month or something. This is precisely why he cannot kick the habit of eating monster cores. Sometimes you just win the ability lottery. Jin was itching to use this thing in actual combat right away. Word about his experiments reached the man in charge of the mission. They've all heard of his head crusher nickname, but none of them thought it meant a habit of crushing his own head. Jin apologized for the graphic experimentation, but Expeditionary Force Supreme Commander Roland from the Order of Harmony doesn't seem to mind. On the contrary, he was fascinated by geniuses like Jin. He believes that geniuses are supposed to be up in the head. Since Jin was a mercenary hand-picked by Elder Bo, he must be one. Changing the subject, Jin asked the commander about their game plan. Roland admired his genius impatience to get down to business. Roland detailed their strategy to head north of the third pioneer city. They will clear out every rift core on the way, while closing in on the center. The exact duration of the operation is uncertain, but the goal is to complete it within 10 days. Jin argued that the area to cover wasn't too big, and 10 days might be a bit too long. Roland agreed that normally that would be a long-ass time, but they're about to find out why the timeline had been stretched. Because of the rift cores, monster territories have expanded. In fact, they just entered one of them. A ground-dwelling little monster with sharp teeth tried to get the jump on Commander Roland, but was sliced in half before it could get close. The residents of the deeper demonic realm are invading human territory. They've grown audacious enough to pop out in the sun without fear. For the next 10 days, there will be non-stop bloodshed between humans and monsters. The beast that attacked the commander was just a warning shot. Soon, the whole expeditionary force was cornered by an underground ambush from all sides. The monsters screeched and attacked from below. The initial assault resulted in gnarly injuries to those who were unprepared. Jin got a good look at the beasts and identified them as leech rats. The leech rats he knew weren't able to dig underground, though. Supreme Commander Roland immediately demonstrated why he was assigned to lead this mission. He was unshakable and his shot calling was clear. He kept an eye on everyone's position and warned Jin when he was targeted by multiple leech rats at once. Instead of fighting back, the supposed genius just stood in place and let dozens of rodents cover him with bites and scratches. They clung to him and tore through his flesh in every way possible. Commander Roland tried to back him up, but the numbers were too overwhelming. Once he was completely covered and obscured by leech rats, Jin executed his plan. Using a dagger and his teeth, he reversed the situation and bit into rat flesh like a rabid dog. The rat leeches thought they were surrounding him. All this time, he was surrounding them. Jin hatched this insane plan just because he wanted to inherit some new abilities. The ability to dig underground doesn't sound too flashy, but he might as well fish for it. Instead of dangerous beasts, all he could see was a small hill of monster cores waiting to be devoured. Every bite was perfectly aimed at maximizing the number of cores he could take in. The chance of inheritance triggering is very low. Gaining a monster skill wasn't always a guarantee, far from it. But this was the real secret to his survival in the demonic realm for 12 years. He died a lot, but that's beside the point. In just a few moments, he stuffed his face with about 40 rat leech cores, and he started to feel full. Unfortunately, his inheritance hit rate was abysmal today. Before he could gain the digging ability, a random soldier drove away the leech rats, covering up his insane activity. Jin tried to tell the soldier to stay back and maintain formation. He can't secretly binge on rats with an audience. Unfortunately, these nosy soldiers didn't know how to mind their own business and yanked him out of the rat pile. His rescue was only possible because the Holy Choir had started their performance. Led by their violinist, Commander Roland himself, the Holy Choir buffed up the entire expedition force. Every perfect note sounded heavenly, and its effects were drastic. Every soldier felt like they were overflowing with power. Slaughtering the rats was a breeze. Jin also experienced the choir's effect. His stamina was restored, and his defense significantly increased. These holy songs were like crack in the form of sound. More importantly, he assumed Roland was a swordsman. Who would have thought that the commander was a support type? While he was performing a beautiful overture, the expedition force launched a potent counterattack. The rat massacre lasted until nightfall. Once the expedition force set up camp, the daily performance of everyone who participated was recorded. Each individual's results will reflect in their share of rewards. That night, curious conversations about Jin spread throughout camp. The guy smashed his head with a rock and charged right into a monster pile on his own volition. Now, some of the soldiers saw him digging in the dirt inside one of the tents. Jin was disappointed to find that he really missed out on the digging ability, despite the quantity of cores he devoured. Commander Roland saw him bent over in the dirt and asked if he was doing all right. Jin apologized for startling everyone earlier, but Roland didn't mind his disturbing behavior. He was focused on Jin's impressive results. When the young man jumped right into the horde, many thought he was dead for sure, but he proved himself with tangible results in the end. According to the official tally, Jin hunted 267 leech rats all by himself. The average soldier only took down 4 or 5. Even the holy knights included in the army capped out at around the 100 mark. Jin's numbers cemented his reputation as a true genius in the commander's eyes. Jin wasn't pleased with those absurd numbers, though.